It's great to be here working with ESG and MAS to offer and support this edition of Deal Friday focusing on food and agri-tech. Very briefly about Padang, but I'll say a little bit more later. We've been around for about 8 years as an innovation catalyst, but started the journey and set up the food and agri practice just a little over 2 years ago. What's amazed me is just how much the interest in the space has grown in that time, which is making it a very exciting opportunity for all, which I will touch on. I'll be drawing on some of the research that our level 3 group has drawn on, and so thank you to Jake, Hugh, Christina and Magdalene for all the work that they put in putting some of this data together. And we'll also be drawing on some of the work we've done with Grow Asia's digital learning series. Later this year, we will be releasing a full report on food and agri-tech in Southeast Asia. So please share details if you're interested in getting that report. Sorry, folks, close that's popped up. Now we're good. So we do is guided by, so have I slowed down? No, it's okay. Everything we do is guided by how might we feed 8.5 billion people by 2030. So all our activities around food and agri-tech is focused on that. That's kind of our true north. Now, obviously, we are in unprecedented times. It's pretty crazy. We've got short-term issues and long-term. Just focusing briefly on the short term at the moment, obviously on the demand side, we've seen a lot of changing consumer behavior. We're at home, we're making food. Obviously, there's been a change in our demand of the type of food that we're looking for. That's obviously had impacts, of course, on the supply side as well. We're seeing foods that normally would have gone to food services not actually being utilized. And for some of them, particular formats and the types of food can't easily just switch and become supermarket foods. So we've got imbalances. Many of us have read or seen about milk being poured out down the drain effectively. Cows need to be milked. There are imbalances. But what's interesting is that we're starting to see a rebalancing happening quite quickly. It can't happen overnight, and so we're going to see a lot more of that. But I guess one of our key messages is the long term. These particular trends that you see there, the growing population and demand for food, as Southeast Asia grows, as we add effectively another Indonesia over the next 10 years, huge demand. And while many people have said, gee, we didn't expect this pandemic, who could have predicted that? Well, we do know about climate change and its environmental impact. That's a known. So we all need to get with the program and start planning. What are we doing about that? And particularly in a food and agri-tech context. And of course, we've also got the issue of changes with as farmers get older, move off the farm, we've got issues in that as well. So more than ever, we really have to be looking at how we're going to strengthen food production and sort of de-risk our supply chains. We can't do it overnight, we know that, but we're starting to see things change. We've started to see in China, the supply side is starting to come back, but interestingly, demand is still a bit soft. So on one sense, there's been a bit of a V recovery in supply, but we're still seeing an L in demand. And one of the other things that's of great concern for many people, of course, is food safety, as it should always be. And unfortunately, in times of crisis, there are opportunists that take advantage of these things. So food safety will continue to be paramount and something that we should continue to look at closely. For the purposes of the presentation today and the startups that you're going to see in a few minutes' time, we're focusing on these 5 key areas. Now, if you like, agri-tech in a sense is a little bit like business as usual. We're looking here at those 3 sectors, how we can do what we're currently doing, but doing it better. Then if we look at food tech, future food, biotech, in a sense, that's the area of sort of kind of disruption, if you will, because it's totally new. So in one way, you can view the agri-tech activities that we'll be talking about, how can we do things better? Obviously, urban farming also has an element of disruption, but it's been around for a while. We're now improving how we do that. And then on the food tech side of things, we're wanting to see how we can develop new sources of food new supplies. So what does that actually mean in the money? Now, when you look at this slide, and I'm sorry if it's a bit small on your screen, but I hope that you can see it clearly enough. The money is small. There has not been huge investment in Asia, which is kind of, it's both strange and not strange at the same time. What we're starting to see is real interest. And as AgFunder reports, they see that the agri-food market in Asia is a 5 trillion, yes, 5 trillion market. So huge opportunity. Obviously here we're seeing single millions in investments, not a lot of deals being funded over the last few years. However, if you look at the bar chart starting down at 2013 and going up, we can see that growth is there. New deals are coming. And that's the point. We are seeing a lot of activity. Here in Singapore, for our overseas joiners, the government is doing a lot. Just picking on one activity the government announced last year, an 144 million investment around the Singapore food story, bringing different groups of R&D together. So there's a lot of things that have been happening, and so we're lagging. Also, last year, there was a report released by PwC and Temasek and Rabobank talking about the investment needed in Asia to feed Asia over the next 10 years. That investment amount, 800 billion. So the opportunities are definitely there, and it's now about how do we take on those opportunities? What do we do to realize those opportunities? Just to give you a bit of a snapshot of what's happening in the marketplace, two slides here, one on Agritech, one on food tech. When we produced an equivalent slide back in early 2018, we could fit both of them on one page, and there was a lot of white space. We've seen a lot of activity, as I said, in the last 2 years, which is very exciting, and we're going to see a lot more. Here's the equivalent one for food tech. Now, apologies to somebody that's watching and saying, my company is not there. Yes, we may have missed some. Apologies, please contact us and we'll include you. Likewise, some of the funding deals that we're not, when the money looks smaller, we've got to remember that not all deals are reported. And so we can only capture what we're able to access through public records. So some of those numbers will be off, but that's okay. We know it's a very small number compared, obviously, when we look at the US or Europe. So in the sense of some of the trends that are occurring and what also is going to drive this future investment and opportunities for folks. Well, as I said before, urban farming, it's been around. We know it's a difficult industry to basically make the economics work. We know the answer is in automation because labor costs and energy are difficult. That's starting to come. Traceability. Now, on the previous slide, you won't have seen any investment in traceability. Traceability at some stages has been seen as a Western concept. Increasingly, there is huge demand within Asia for greater traceability. And as we heard from Unilever last week at another webinar, they're actually using a lot of traceability data, repurposing that and using that to assist in logistics management. So traceability has got a huge opportunity to provide multiple sources of opportunity. FinTech, it's a very interesting one as far as FinTech goes. We know the smallholder farmers in this region have low access. Most of them don't have bank accounts, don't have access to finance. The Economist Food Security Index, sponsored by Corteva, showed that there was the highest correlation between a country's food security index and the amount of finance available for smallholder farmers or farmers in that particular region. So huge opportunity to focus on FinTech and providing opportunities for those farmers. Future foods, well, we're all excited about that. Certainly plant-based, we're well aware of the opportunities that have been realized that we've seen with Beyond Impossible. We know that cultivated meat, cultivated dairy is coming, and you'll hear more about that later. But that's going to be a ways off. I mean, it's about how quickly can you commercialize. I won't steal Fengra's thunder, and she can speak about that. Biotech, again, a very interesting area of how we can look at the contents of food. What can we change? Singapore's strength in biotech, I believe, makes this a huge opportunity that we're going to see Singapore realize over the years. Now, just kind of give a sense of what's actually been happening in the region of late and some of the activities. We've seen a number of different types of challenges that have been sponsored from the likes of Rabobank, ID Capital. And importantly, when we sort of look in the center, we see the number of VCs that are now here. When I said that the money is coming, well, the money has started to arrive. And again, many thanks to Enterprise Singapore, the Seeds Capital program that contributed $90 million to 7 partners, many of whom are featured here in this table, is going to add a lot. Well, there's actually quite a bit of dry powder out there at the moment of VCs looking to invest in opportunities. We're also seeing talent arrive. Nitsa of Trendlines moved from Israel not so long ago to head up the food and agri practice here in Singapore. Grow just this last week, the Ag Funder Associated Accelerator announced the Singapore Food Bowl, which is a great initiative, and Dole has stepped up to sponsor that program with the ESG. And Dole attracted Ilanet Kabessa from Israel as well to come and head up their venture activities. So we're seeing new corporates coming into the space, a lot of new activities, and a lot of funds are there. So we're going to see a lot of changes. And then to the right, 2 organizations that we're familiar with, and I'll go into that a little bit more detail in a second. Both Unilever and DSM are working very closely with us as they're developing innovation hubs here in Singapore to support food and agri-tech activities. Now, just a little bit about us and what we've been doing. I mean, we've been lucky to be part of a number of these activities that I was just showing on the previous slide. Back in actually 2018, we did a hackathon for Grow Asia, which has sort of set the stage, involving a lot of corporates, as you can see there. We have been involved in these hackathons with Rabobank and a number of major corporates that you can see the logos of there. And then as we move to the right of the screen, the Digital ASEAN program supported by Yara and MUFG and Grow Asia actually was effectively the first Agritech accelerator launched back in 2018. So we're fortunate to be associated with that as well. And now we have a program with IFC AgTech Vietnam, which is thanks to COVID on a little bit of a pause. But importantly, these 2 programs there on the right were very much about piloting. And that's what we're seeing a lot more of. The people coming up with the ideas here in Singapore, the startups coming here and developing different programs and taking them into the field, because we do need to be in the field to make these activities really work. Level 3 that I just spoke of is a facility that we jointly started just over 3 years ago with Unilever Foundry, which is Unilever's platform to work with startups. As you can see, there's Cargill's there, Syngenta, Unilever. So any of our international listeners, if you have or are startups wanting to come to Singapore and wanting to set up a base, Level 3 is a great opportunity for you to come there and work with those organizations. Just recently, we've also opened the Bright Science Tech Innovation Hub with DSM. DSM is one of the world's largest life sciences companies. And so here, we're focusing far more on the food and nutrition side of activities. And we're also very privileged to have partnered with Incubator. Incubator is Singapore's only NEA licensed co-working kitchen space. So now, as you can see with those couple of photos there, the startups that work out of this space can develop their ideas. They can take their ideas into the lab. work them up in the lab, go through, prototype the particular ideas, and then they can move over to Incubator's kitchen to produce the ideas and then even test them in the cafe that's associated with their kitchen outside, and of course do sampling programs throughout the community. So through that program, we basically from ideation through to sales through that collaboration. So that's a very exciting one for us, and I think for Singapore, an incubator is offering an amazing service that we're particularly pleased to be associated with. Now I'm coming up to my final slide. You'll get the details as pointed out before. You can download and access the slides. And coming up now, you're going to see those hear from 9 startups that we helped select and have been working with in the startup clinics over the last couple of weeks. As you can see, they also are seated in those 5 sectors that I've been speaking about. So with that, thank you for your attendance, and I look forward to seeing the startups. Good luck to all of them.